Chapter 1. Courage. The greatest battles of life are fought out daily in the silent chambers of the soul. David O. McKay. I don't like to reflect too much on my early childhood, as it was oftentimes filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and fear. Fear would whisper in my ear, preventing me from stepping out but telling me I'd fail. Fear reminded me of my past, so I couldn't live in the present and would never have a future. Fear is the loudest when you're doing something that matters, and the voice that tells me right now that I have nothing to write about is the same voice that in 2001 told me I've got nothing to sing about. Now, after 6 albums, 200,000 records sold, and 12 countries toured, I've finally learned not to listen to it. I've heard that all fear stands for is false evidence appearing real. Fear is an image or a thought in your mind that seems real, but in reality has no power at all. An illusion, so to overcome fear, you have to recognize the illusion. I've named this book Fighter, but I'm not talking about a physical fight in an arena with an opponent on the other side of the ring ready to throw down. I'm talking about a fight within oneself, with the person staring back at you in the mirror. Most things we worry about never come to pass anyway. We spend so much time replaying negative thoughts in our minds that it paralyzes us. I noticed that I would talk myself out of great ideas before I even tried to use them. Now, as soon as I have a good idea, I act on it immediately and picture myself being successful at it. As the proverb goes, as a man thinks, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. But I'm no stranger to fear. I can't tell you how many times I skated up to the edge of a staircase to slide down the handrail or ollie a set of stairs on my skateboard, and right before I launched, I put my foot down and skidded to a halt. Or how much I've struggled with stage fright. I used to run to the bathroom 3 or 4 times before I had to go on stage. One time at an award show in Edmonton, Alberta, they announced my name to an empty stage because I'd gotten so excited thinking about what I'd say to the crowd if I won that I disappeared into the men's room instead of staying backstage like the coordinator told me to. I have a great photo from that night of me standing in front of the men's room holding my award. Now, after thousands of performances and numerous speaking gigs in 12 different countries or more, I've built up the courage to get a better handle on my nerves, but they never really go away entirely. I've traveled to Australia, the United States, Canada, Singapore, China, Japan, England, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Amsterdam, New Zealand, and Germany. But before every performance, I still have to pinch myself, jump around, or do vocal warm-ups to loosen me up a bit. Courage isn't something we're born with. We're born with fearlessness, and that's an entirely different thing. Courage has to be built, like building a muscle, strengthening it by flexing it over and over and increasing the weight each time. You have to train yourself in courage. The best example I can think of is the open mic nights I used to go to back in Toronto. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to act in spite of my fear. Michael Hyatt. Step up to the mic. Back in the day, I had a producer friend named Jerry. He was a real low-key, older hip-hop producer who had befriended me and started molding me as an artist. He used to help me work on my lyrics, and he came to all my shows. I always say he was like my hip-hop sensei. One day after watching me perform, Jerry told me I needed to work on my stage presence. He had a plan. He told me about an open mic at a place called Holy Joe's, and one night we drove down there together. I didn't even know if I was going up, but I made sure I dressed fresh so I'd be confident. I was cold that night, so I had on my brown leather jacket and a beanie, and I threw on some nice cologne. The outside of the building was dark purple, and you had to walk through a club called the Cathedral to get into Holy Joe's. We climbed up a winding staircase to the second floor and entered a cozy lounge with a bar, couches against the walls, dimmed lights, and a small stage. A DJ was spinning beats, and the room had a real urban hip-hop vibe. The room capacity was about 150 people, and it was packed tight that night. Some of the best MCs in Toronto gathered here to showcase their talent. Many spent more time and money on their outfits than they did their music, but that's a side note. Most artists wanted to create a buzz about their performance, so an A&R guy of a record label would take notice and sign them to a deal. These were the days of hawking your CDs. Now we live in a world where it's tough to even give your music away. But anyways, there were 2 MCs hosting the event, a girl named Tara Chase and a guy named Marvel. Plus, there was always a DJ spinning. I went up to the front of the room and put my name down on the sign-up sheet. At some point in the night, they would call me up to perform. As I signed my name, I was so nervous I broke into a sweat. My hands went clammy and I started fidgeting. My friend was like, "Are you alright, man? Don't worry, you'll be fine." There were a lot of people there that night and I didn't know anyone except Jerry. I was around 20 years old, completely new to the scene, and the only white guy in the room. To make it worse, Toronto was known for its haters. Back in the day, there was rumors that if you sucked as a rapper, they'd pull the fire alarm during your set. If you could make it in Toronto, you could make it anywhere. It wasn't encouraging at all. It kind of freaked me out. A lot of artists, when they're new, feel like they have something to prove, and I assumed people would automatically diss me right away. I had a lot of thoughts that night. Back then, it was all about having a dope verse, not a dope song. You'd go up and spit your dopest verse, so I was sitting there thinking, which one do I choose? The problem is you could have a certain lyric or a song in your mind ready to sing, but the DJ could spin a beat that didn't match it. This is where the training comes in, and you have to be able to freestyle, switch it up on the fly. Otherwise, you'll be standing there staring at the audience, staring back at you, waiting for you to do something. You don't want to choke. When they called my name, I nearly fell out of my chair. I got up on stage and the DJ started spinning a beat. I let it play for a few seconds before I grabbed the mic and kicked a rhyme as hard as I could. Then I put the mic down and started to walk off the stage. I was stage struck, dizzy with adrenaline, and I just wanted to get back to my seat as quickly as possible. I thought, okay, I did it. Now let's get the heck out of here before bottles start flying. But the crowd started cheering. Then I heard Marvel say, "Manafest, get the beat back up here and kick something else. That was hot." I thought, wow, they actually liked it. They liked the white boy, and I'm getting an encore? I walked out of there that night with my producer friend feeling taller than the CN Tower. He put his arm around my shoulders and told me how proud he was, that he would brag about that night for weeks. I wish all the nights went as great as the first, but that's not the truth. One time I went to the front to perform, and for some reason the beat the DJ played caught me off guard. Instead of going right into a dope verse or saying something cool, I said, "Are you feeling the vibe? 'Cause I'm feeling the vibe." I stood there rocking back and forth like a big white giraffe. I went into an awkward verse and then sat down where my friend was waiting for me, laughing. I was like, What? He pointed to two girls sitting in the crowd. They were giggling, mocking me, saying, "I'm feeling the vibe. Are you feeling the vibe?" I was so embarrassed, but I hung out the rest of the night to watch others perform, network with people, and learn something by watching other artists. One of the greatest assets of touring is seeing so many different live shows and studying what works and what doesn't with the crowd. It's so much easier when you're just a spectator. Another night, they called up one of my friends who sang R&B, and he was able to give them a CD so they could play his track. He was a big white guy who dressed kind of like a hillbilly, so the audience was like, what in God's name is this guy going to do? Adam Messenger produced the track, so when the beat started, heads were nodded, and my friend's voice filled the entire room. Before he was finished, people were on the edge of their seats cheering him on. Marvel was like, "Dang, I thought he was going to play the spoons or something. That beat was dope." After that, I went up every week at Holy Joe's for a year straight. I went up so often that Marvel started introducing me as the Iron Man of open mics. I hadn't missed one since it started. Some really dope MCs started coming around, and it took a lot of courage to get up there. After a while, I started freestyling, making up rhymes on the spot. People would hold things up, and I started calling them out. I used Marvel's name in a freestyle bit and earned a lot of respect. Eventually, they allowed me to perform there. It was great practice in that volatile environment where as a performer you have such little control over the show. I didn't know it at the time, but I was building my courage. I was preparing for anything. I was earning my chops. Open mics kept me sharp. They were the right incubator for my career, and they improved my stage presence eventually. As much as I didn't want to at times, I forced myself back on that stage. I practiced making eye contact with my audience and noticed that if I felt comfortable, they would too. My girlfriend Melanie worked with me on my rhythm, so I moved more on beat. It was this training that helped me understand how to work a crowd and not lose them. I can now perform a song and within seconds know by the facial expressions and body language of the crowd what I need to do to win them over. As for courage, I remember one night a guy pulled me aside and told me that I may or may not be scared to get up there, but one thing is certain, 90% of the people in the crowd would never do it. They would love to do it, but they're too scared. It's true. If you can do something the majority of the people cannot do, what are you waiting for? Get up and just do it. The important thing is this, to be able at any moment to sacrifice what we are for what we could become. Charles Dubois. I quit. I can still see myself sitting at my desk reading and rereading the email I had typed to my boss asking to have a meeting about my resignation. I looked up at the office ceiling, closed my eyes, and with all the weight of the world in my fingers coming down on the keyboard, I hit send. When it came time to quit my job, it took a different kind of courage. I was in my early 20s working as a network engineer, aka computer nerd, making around $70,000 a year with a comfy office and full benefits. I was still living at my home at the time, so I wasn't worrying about rent. I had already started a music career by then, so on the weekends and most weeknights I performed, and by day I'd work with computers and daydream about playing music full-time until it became a daily habit. I had just gotten signed to Tooth & Nail Records and thought I had built up my music career enough to make the jump. According to plan, I had gone from working 5 days a week to 4 days to 3 days and so on, taking off Mondays and Fridays to play shows. Finally, I requested a leave of absence from my job to go on tour for a month. My boss had always been supportive, but asking for a month off took a lot of guts. My cash flow fluctuated as I whittled down my working days and funneled money into my music. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. I thought, what happens if nobody likes my music? Am I ever going to be good enough? What if I quit, fail, and they won't give me my job back? Do I really have what it takes? Then I got some advice from a good friend. He said, you don't want to be 40 years old looking back at your life wondering, what if? What if you never quit your job? What if you never called that girl? What if you never went to college? What if, and what if? I worked out my income quickly on a piece of paper and called my lawyer asking him how much I would need to make it work. I would have to start touring full time. Then I called my manager and told him my monthly budget and the amount of income I needed to cover my bills. He said, okay, cool. I was so green back then. I had no idea how cutthroat and unforgiving this industry was. I was going to be a rap star. I wanted it so bad. I prayed with my wife long and hard. I would soon find out how much I was going to need those prayers. Faith is taking action when common sense says no. After I sent my resignation letter, my boss scheduled an in-person meeting with me at his house. He asked me to leave for a little while and come back to work part-time. I told him how much I appreciated his offer, but I politely declined. I didn't know how good I had it. Not only were they paying me well, but they promoted me quickly and they understood my passion for music. I remember one Christmas, the vice president of the company bought me Eminem's Greatest Hits as a show of solidarity. When I opened the gift that was sitting on my desk at 8 a.m. in the morning and saw who it was from, it blew me away. But I guess it was my rebel side, the skater punk in me fighting against the suits that was driving me away. I still wanted to do music. And from that point forward, I put my finances in hands of people I barely knew. I went on the road, I had a manager who never really believed in my music, and people made promises they never kept. I went deep into debt in the process, but I also learned about the music business. I traveled the world and I figured out how the machine worked. The music industry, whether Christian or not, it's like the NFL. You're the quarterback and better have your game face on or you're going to get run over. There was so much holding me back and it took me years to figure it out. But when I look back, I know if I hadn't had the courage to get out there and try something new, I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, more than 9 years later, I'm sitting in my house in California writing this book and thanking God I stepped out and had the courage to see it through. So many times I wanted to quit and go back to that job. So many times I cried when it got tough. So many times I second-guessed if it was the right decision. I'd be staying in some stranger's home on the road with a backpack full of CDs and a microphone, begging people to love my music, or playing sweaty, nasty festivals in the middle of summer wondering what I was doing when I had left an air-conditioned office and people who loved working with me. Pushing through all that crap, it's not sexy. Creating your own path is a lot of hard work and it's lonely. It takes courage to have a vision, especially when other people can't see it. The label couldn't see it. My manager couldn't see it. I was just a white rapper from Canada. They didn't see potential there or sales. I wasn't marketable in their eyes. I watched them put money behind other artists and make the important calls, all the things I wanted them to do for me, but didn't. The label wasn't pushing me properly. I didn't have any radio hits, and some of my songs just weren't there. I had to push myself and pull others along with me, and that gets tiring. But you get to learn a lot about yourself. At what point is there not enough courage left to keep going? Where's your breaking point? Now I ask myself, what do I see now that I didn't see 5 years ago? And how would someone else live my life if they were me? That way I can find new visions to propel myself forward. Courage takes commitment. When I was skating, I used to roll up with my wheels right on the edge of a staircase or gap, shouting, "Come on, just do it!" and see myself in my mind standing at the top. I'd scream, throw my board, spit, and try anything just to stir myself up. Eventually, my friends with the camera would shout, "Stop being such a wimp!" The problem is I just had to commit. No plan B, just go for it. I'd pray, meditate, and catch my breath, but once my wheels left the pavement and I flew off the stairs, I was committed. If I managed to even come close without hurting myself, all the fear was gone. Each attempt became easier and easier. It's our fear of the unknown or what we think might happen that holds us back. I didn't ask permission. I didn't say, should I be a musician? If I'd based my decision on the approval of others, it wouldn't have been enough. I never asked anyone but God, and He helped me overcome fear. I just know that if it's your passion, then it comes from the right source, so do it. Courage has to come from inside, and approval has to come from a source larger than yourself. Don't ask others to approve your dreams or set your goals for you. By doing that, you're giving up your God-given gift of choice. So all I have to say is, whatever your dream is, do it, despite what everyone else says, or you'll be the one staring back at your life wondering, what if, what if, what if? It's at the bottom where it's crowded, but there's plenty of room at the top.